that everyone is in good health and that they have enough energy to stay focused and let us get through tonight's meeting as soon as possible. For those who are not members of the executive committee, I want to say welcome and provide a special thanks to you. For those who are members of the general body meeting and you come out tonight to take part in the exec committee meeting, I want to say thank you for making the time. With that, Jessica, are you ready to take minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. I don't know that we have anybody who doesn't know who I am, but for those who don't, I'm Lenny Singletary, Chair Community Board 2. Our vice chairs are Leonard Jordan, Barbara Zala-Gringer, and as you heard in the question I raised, Jessica Thurston serves as our secretary. I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda for this evening's meeting.
Moved.
Mr. Meyer, second. Ms. Zala-Gringer. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from October 25th? Are there any noted corrections? I would suggest that if you have any questions, please feel free to submit to the board office and we'll make sure we capture them in full context. All in favor of the minutes from October 25th? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't there.
Perfect. Thank you. So we'll jump in. Can I just ask everyone, if you're not speaking, if you go on mute? Thank you. So for the chairperson's report, a couple of things I want to mention tonight, and then really in no particular order, but just things that I think are important for us to be mindful of. One is our meetings. You know, each of us either chair a meeting or in some cases serve as a co-chair in which you are co-chairing the meeting. But I'm starting to take a look at the length of time. And I think some of our meetings go entirely way too long. And so that's from my lens. There may be others who disagree, but let me give you the context for my thoughts. When I look at the YouTube recordings, when I pay attention to the minutes, and let me just take a moment to say, every single person who serves as the secretary for all of our committees and for the general body does an excellent, outstanding, amazing job in that capacity. I've never found the minutes to be lacking of any information, and never have I found the minutes to not capture the essence and the material of the information that's been captured. So across the board, please convey to the respective secretaries on my behalf that they do a fantastic job. But when I look at the minutes, I look at the recordings, there's far too much extended conversation that's taking place. I find that the chairs and co-chairs are so passionate. Each of you are passionate about hearing from the community and getting it right, giving them the platform. But I'd love for us to collectively figure out how do we strike a balance, because what I don't want any of us to forget is that while we still may be in a virtual environment for now, and we may have the luxury of participating and sharing the meetings from your respective homes, if and when we go back to a normal environment, which was pre-pandemic in the sense that you're meeting in person, and for the sake of the virtual functionality no longer being existent, we do not want to set a precedent where we have 4.5, and I dare say some cases 5-hour meetings. My words solely, not to cast any disparaging comments to the community or to make any of the members here feel like you're obligated to those comments, but that's ridiculous. 5 hours to discuss a meeting of any topic. And remember, we're still volunteers. So I'd love to be able to figure out a way where collectively we give some thought to solutions to help reduce the time, maybe curtail some of the comments that take place, and do it in a way that's respectful to the community. Because I do know that there's a fine line between providing a structure and some level of order to the meeting without offending the community. You know, also want to remind us that our primary goal is to be the voice for the community, to the agencies, to the partners, and be able to hear them out efficiently. And while I've often said that I don't want to have our general body meetings be a replay of the committee meetings, I do want to be mindful and put that to top of mind for each of you as chair and co-chairs to figure out how we do that. Now, I've always worked from a perspective that when you bring an idea to someone, they probably deserve the right time to think about it. And so I'm happy to set aside some time if we want to discuss it tonight. But ideally, what I'd like to do is have people think about it, give it some real thought, and let's come up with a solutions-oriented way to handle this. And the reason I'm putting an emphasis on solutions-oriented, I want to be clear. I do not care how we got here. I do not care what non-solution comments you want to say. I have no appetite for that. I do not care about that. What I care about is a solution to get us to the goal. That's a better balance between respect and our time. So with that, let me pause for a second. If anybody has any comments that initially come to you because of my comments, I'm happy to entertain that. But this is for a larger conversation, but I'll open the floor.
You know,
My name is Carlton Gordon. We've been informed that the controller's office is now requiring us to do public comment on every item that we have to vote on or items for action.
So hold
And
on.
that's
hold on
something
that thought.
that's going to extend.
Carlton, hold on that thought for a minute, because I'm going to come to the auditor's report in a second.
Okay.
And that is something that could play a factor. I'm not necessarily clear that we're going to sign up for what's being recommended, because when I get to the auditor's report, you'll see a true disconnection between what their purview is versus reality. So just hold that thought for a second, but that is a contributing factor.
then I'm gonna put my hand down and hold until then, because we changed what we did on our last meeting, and I wanted to discuss that as well.
Yeah, I saw your email. I didn't respond yet because I'm still trying to figure that out, but I got it. Barbara?
I just wanted to say that sometimes I think there may be too many agenda items. It's not just that people are talking a lot. It's just that maybe something should have been, if possible, put off to the next meeting.
That's a fair point. What I'll say is, to the best of our ability, when things hit the agenda item, what our practice has been is to put things that are time driven. And so if there's a time requirement, that's one thing. But outside of that, I think you make a great point. That's definitely worth further review and evaluation. We should be able to figure that out. Any other comments from chairs and co-chairs? Georgia?
Just to follow up on that comment, I have understood that if, especially at land use, if we try to push an agenda item because of the timelines of the city, we lose our opportunity to comment overall. And so I think there's pressure from the agencies that we don't have control over, which makes our committee in particular overburdened at times.
Yeah, and that's true. This goes something that was discussed a while back. And once again, this is my terminology. There are some committees that are more sexier than others, meaning that everybody wants to go to that committee. Everybody's got something to say. Everybody does a major turnout. In my eyes, all of our committees are equally important. But clearly the impact that certain items have to the community is probably going to bring a different nature of passion from the community. And so that is something that is not going to be equal amongst all the committees, but there is a way that we can work to that. And I think the fact that we're having a discussion about the agenda as one topic is something that at least we can start to work towards, to see if there's a better solution there, or if there are things that Carol Ann, Taya, and myself, along with Barbara and Mr. Jordan, can figure out from an executive committee, not really from executive committee, but from the board leadership perspective, to see how we give close attention to that. I tend to think that there's probably little wiggle room there, but I think everything's on the table for review.
As Daughtry points out, most of our stuff is basically time limited. If we don't comment at, let's say, a January meeting, then that's it. We don't get another chance at it. So it's we're in a very tricky position. We rarely have items that are not time limited.
Got it. Anybody else? Brandon?
One thing I'm trying to do, because this is definitely an issue I've experienced, is to put time limits on different agenda items that I don't militantly enforce at the committee, but at the same time provide sort of a suggestion for where we're going. We at least were able to shorten the time for our last meeting, and hopefully we can continue in that area.
Yeah, and just I'll just say this. You know, I think all of you may have either heard or maybe I got it through an email. I'm not sure, but a board member, and I think it was Mr. Dew, who asked a question about time clocks and things of that nature. Once again, these are all of the things that I want to bring to the table for us to discuss in greater context, because there may be some technology, some creative ways. I know the office has already begun to explore different things that can help us keep a better structure that will reduce some of the commenting that takes place. You know, this is all good ideas. I do want to have a more robust conversation about it as well. But just, you know, even as I was given this thought a few weeks ago, when I wanted to make sure this was a reminder for this evening's conversation, that there are times when people are just repetitive. Like, we don't need parrot comments. If someone said it, I don't need someone to parrot that same comment. And I'm guilty of being accused for being rude. And in the right context, I'll accept that. But you have to be able to move a meeting along. You can't just have people parroting comments over and over. So, you know, how we figure that out collectively, I'm sure we'll get there. But Barbara, I think you had a question that Brandon raised. And so I think all of us kind of agree that that's another solution that could be helpful. But we'll take a closer look at that and we'll report back on the next meeting. So while I move this along, Carolyn and Taya, if I could remind you that for the next exec committee meeting, under the chairperson's report, if you could just put meeting length as a bulleted agenda item, and then we can talk about it in greater length and set aside some time for a solution that we can bring into the new year. So thank you for that. The next item I want to talk about is the report from the auditor. So we had an audit from the controller's office, and I want to thank the office, Caroline and Taya, for engaging with the controller. And respectfully, I want to say that there are some items that I think the controller's office missed, but I'm also mindful that I don't know anyone who always agrees 100% with an auditor. I don't care what industry it is. Auditors are not trained, nor are they required to look at things from your vision, from your shoes. There's a set of policies, procedures, there's a structure. In our case, the city charter. You read the charter, you engage and observe the behavior of the board, and are you addressing it or are you not? There are instances where there are things that are on the books that we may not be adhering to. I'll say that right from the start. And I do believe that the audit captures some of those items. There are other things that I think the audit probably just got a little confused on. I won't say that they missed anything related to the type of meetings and how we communicated during the pandemic and maybe even a few months leading up to that, which the board office did a great job of submitting evidence and documentation to show that we have been compliant. But one of the items that has come up is this notion of, I'm going to generally context as public access and streaming, so that no matter where you are within the district, you don't have to physically be present to see what's happening live. But some of us who've been on the board for a while, you do recall that there was a similar request made, and there was equipment that was purchased to help facilitate that. But when you purchase equipment, you need operators to help make that work. And we had a different staff at the time that was trying their best to, record everything. So remember we had, one of our colleagues at the time had headphones on, was behind the camera, trying to move and capture everything. And then with that departure from the office, that particular skill set was no longer available. Being short-staffed, that was a piece that we weren't able to actually capitalize on. And so as an alternative to that, that's when we began to start posting stuff on the YouTube channel, right? Because at the time, the understanding of the language was that you make the meetings available to the public. The real-time nature of that wasn't something that rose to the attention of everyone that required us to adhere to that aspect of it. Now the result of the controller's report really speaks to the real-time nature. So again, that requires a greater, more enhanced use of technology, because one, you need a platform that people can stream from. Two, you need the resources, either through manpower or financial, to be able to accommodate that. And then three, what does that look like? You probably have to go through some level of perhaps maybe editing, maybe not, I don't really know. But Carol Ann has reached out to Brick and to be able to get a little more information to see if Brick is willing to help us do that. The last point I want to make before I have Carol Ann speak and give us some context about what that relationship could look like, because we haven't signed up for anything yet, is the other side of it is it takes away the nature of having our meetings move around the district, right? One of the things that we were always proudful and one of the things that we stayed focused on was taking the meetings to the district, so that if for whatever reason, your ability to get from, let's say, Clinton Hill to Williamsburg, or from Williamsburg to Dumbo, or from Dumbo to Brooklyn Heights, if, at some point we were going to get around to your area. If we do have to engage in more of a regular streaming type of production, then you have to go where the resources are. And if in case Brick does become that place, I'm not saying it has or isn't, it's just something that's on the table at the moment, then that nature of taking the meeting around the district will be degraded to some degree. And so it's important that we all understand the various options that we would have to consider on what would be a long-term solution to meet the findings of the audit. And so with that, let me just pause for a second. And Carol Ann, if you would, just give us a brief update on anything that I've left out from the audit, and into some of your conversations with Brick.
Okay, good. So as the chair stated, the audit found some things that we weren't doing, and that is the broadcasting, cable casting part of things. But they also said that we weren't adhering to public hearing standards. And we comply with the spirit of the regulations. So we're talking about just putting on the agendas public comment on action items. Some folks asked if that takes away community forum. It does not, because comment at that point will only be on the actions to be voted on. Brick. So Brick has said that they can broad or cable cast our meetings as the regulation is written. Essentially, we send them our YouTube recordings at this point, and they will put it on their channel, Brooklyn Free Speech TV, and they'll attempt to get us on a schedule so that folks can see it on multiple occasions. The other thing is the actual, if we're to do hybrid meetings, they probably won't be able to do that because it requires a lot of equipment set up, and that is usually done in their studio. The hybrid meetings, we'll have to find another vendor, and they offered to put us in touch with a reference. And that's it.
Thank you, Carol Ann. So again, more to come on the request from the audit, but given my report and Carol Ann's report, let me pause to see if there's any feedback or comments. I know Carlton and Sid has some statements that I think were related, or not think, but are related to this. So let me start with Carlton, Sid, Barbara, and Betty in that manner. So Carlton, Sid, Barbara, Betty in that order. Carlton.
Okay, I'll repeat it again. As a result of the audit, we are now required to, at this point, or what I've been informed, we are required to offer public comment on every item that we're voting on. So it's, especially we do have the Landmark Preservation Commission applications, and we could have 4 or 5 usually at any one meeting. So it means that then we would open up at the start, and not even when it's presented, but at the start, are there people that wish to speak on that item? And you try to give, we would then give them at least a few minutes on each item that we're voting on, not just, let's say, for the ULURPs or the boards of standard of appeals, which is already, we already have a public comment participation. Those public hearings, you know, the people are already fitted in for vote, you know, to comment. But this would take additional comments on every item that we vote on. And that, given what your concern is with the length of the meeting, will clash and will be a problem.
I'm not sure it'll be a problem, but it's definitely a point under consideration.
Yes.
Sid?
You know, I did at our meeting, we did that with a public comment section at the beginning. And the comment had nothing to do with what we were voting on. When we allow them to do, and I was happy to do it. I think it was very good to do when the people who were commenting were doing the normal stuff that they would raise in the community forum. I don't think the people who are there understand, frankly, the difference between what we're voting on and what is a public comment. And it makes no sense to me, frankly, to allow people to make a public comment at the beginning of the meeting when there's going to be a presentation on an issue, which will either explain it or raise more questions. And it seems to me that it's both out of order, out of time, and out of mind, frankly. You know, I looked at the statute after this, and I see, you know, that there's nothing in the open meetings law that requires that we have comments on things that we're going to vote on. You're clearly not going to do it at the general. Are we going to begin doing that at the general membership meeting to allow people to comment on things that are going to be voting on things that have already been discussed and voted on in committee? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I, you know, I've been involved in many audits, and sometimes the auditors, frankly, don't understand what's going on and are wrong both on the law and on the facts. And I'm not so sure that's not the case here. And I discussed this with John Quint because he's the secretary of the committee. And we changed, you know, we now call it a public comment section, but frankly, it's the community. I don't have any problems moving the community, what really is the community forum, to the beginning of the meeting, because that really saves people time from sitting through an entire meeting when they have no interest in it, frankly. And I don't have a problem doing that, but I don't think that this is that the auditors, that the controller's office is correct. And 2, I don't think that they're right on the understanding of the rule.
Barbara?
Well, I wanted to talk about the live streaming. I don't understand what the difference is between live streaming and doing a Zoom.
Well, essentially a Zoom is live. Like this is live engagement. This is not edited. This is not a tape delay. And so if you had enough licenses, essentially you could open up to the entire district, but you're paying for the licenses at some point, where if you go through Brick would probably, as an example, so let me just say as an example, because Brick is an entity, that provides public access television, they could then take the mechanisms of the resources they have, and instead of having a license, so to speak, there's a fee, so that allows you to be able to see it. The other thing too, when you think about a Zoom has to be, you have to be allowed access. You have to be provided some level of acceptance to come into the Zoom, where through Brick, it's more of a open public forum where you don't necessarily need permission, for lack of a better term, to be able to access that. If you have that channel, or you have access to that channel, or even through their website, it gives you more of a truly open public context for looking at the
I see.
information.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Betty?
Hi. Okay, I appreciate that some of the other committees obviously have a lot more content and discussion and so on than we do. So I appreciate all of that. I wanted to comment on the fact that if we have to have our meetings like in one place when we go back to in person, because of the technology and the streaming and whatnot, that would negatively affect our committee, because in the past, pre-COVID, we would visit different facilities, such as the STEAM Center in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, or a culinary program at Westinghouse High School, so on. And that gives us richness and understanding of the type of programming that's delivered to the members of our community, and what we hope for the future, etc. And that would be that would take away from some of our work.
So thank you. So let me just add this. I'm not going to repeat the things that I've already mentioned, because I think we all are on the same page with that. But one of the things that I do want to comment on, and it really this is just for thought, while the write-up from the comptroller specifically highlights where public comments are placed in an agenda, I think we should start to think a little differently about what that means. It may not be the right solution or the only solution to rearrange where public comments fit within an agenda. It may be appropriate, and for certain items, we've done this in the past, particularly at our journal body meeting. If, for example, there is a large group of individuals who want to come to a committee, and because it comes to mind, not because I'm picking on one, let's just use parks as an example. So I have 20 people who want to come to a parks committee because they're passionate about a tree being planted at a location. To have everyone who's participating in the Parks Committee meeting be allowed to speak first in the open forum, when it is just that, an open forum, you may get comments that are not material or germane to the topic at hand. However, what has been our practice is that when we have a topic item, we have reserved the right for members to speak on that topic, so that when we can vote on it, you get the feedback from the members of the committee, either be it as assignment because you are a board member or because you are a public member of that committee. If we think a little differently, that may be the opportunity to open up to the public to get their feedback on that particular topic, in which case it requires two things. It requires a little education up front of what the committee structure is and how it's going to work. So some statements beyond just, hi, my name is, and these are our members, versus at this point, what we are going to do is hear first from the members of the committee, as an example, and then we'll set aside 10 minutes for comments to come from the community. Each person is allowed 2 minutes, and outside of that 2 minutes, then we need to move on. If for whatever reason, you're not able to get your comments in within the 2 minutes, then you will have the next opportunity to have your comments shared at the end or at an appropriate time, but we need to move forward with the agenda item because we need to take action. Now, I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying we all need to think that way, But that's an opportunity where the community can have a chance to speak. And number two, if I put myself as a community person and there's a topic I wanted to speak about that would perhaps influence the vote, for me to wait till the end to make those comments add no value because you already voted now, and that means nothing. And if I do it at the beginning, but then it's something that's maybe number 6 on the agenda, it may lose interpretation. You may tend to, not appreciate the immediacy of the topic at hand. So while I know the topic was made about up and down, it's still an opportunity for us to review where it can happen within a meeting. So that's just food for thought. I'm not looking to debate that. I'm not really looking for feedback. I think, again, we'll find a way to engage this for longer conversation at another point in time. But I did want to have the committee to think differently about that. The next item I want to mention are bylaws. So I've been giving it some thought. I've been talking to both Carol Ann and Taya. I think given the ability to use technology and what the future may hold as far as a hybrid context, it may require, I think it's a good thing to do, let me say it that way, to reconstitute a bylaws committee to take a review of the bylaws. I've not decided yet who I'm going to ask to serve as the chair and co-chair of that ad hoc committee, but wanted to give everyone a chance to know that in next year, 2022, we're going to ask I'm going to ask for and appoint a chair and a co-chair for the bylaws committee to review the bylaws, and then we'll have clear instructions of things that we want to have reviewed and looked at in the bylaws, but definitely want everyone to be aware that that's going to come up. And then last but not least, and I think it bears repeating because I want to make sure that I cover this. If I've done it in the past, excuse the repeat, but I wanted to welcome Nicole McKnight, who has officially served and agreed to serve as the vice chair of the Health, Environment, and Social Service Committee. And she is someone who has been an active participant just as a member. And I want to thank her for agreeing to say yes. A lot of times you can ask people to do things, and for legitimate, true reasons, family, work, everything, they're not able to have their passion meet their schedule. And so Nicole was able to make that intersection for me quite well. And she was able to say yes. And so I want to thank her for that. And then just really being transparent as we go through the year. And for as long as you all will have me to serve as chair, I'm hoping to make other changes so that we have chairs and co-chairs for every committee. We have a diverse slate of individuals spread throughout the district, and there's more inclusiveness in how we make decisions, which has always been our case, but I want to continue to move in that direction. So just wanted to say that and say thank you again to Nicole. So with that, that concludes my chairperson's report. We'll move into agenda item number 5. I noticed we have on here committees for action, finance and personnel. And in my conversations with Mr. Jordan, I don't recall that he was going to make tonight's meeting. So I'm not sure if this item needs to be acted upon tonight or if we can hold it over to the next executive committee meeting. I'm looking for the office to respond.
I think it's
And the December, yes. Or we could read at the general meeting if you don't mind also, that's an option.
So I either can hold it over until the next exec committee meeting or perhaps bring it up at the general body meeting.
Yeah.
All right, so my initial inclination is to hold it to the next exec committee meeting. I think the general body meeting may have a significant number of items, but I'll give you final instruction shortly. So then that moves us up to land use, Mr. Gordon.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Singletary. We had one Landmark Preservation Commission application at 253 Carlton Avenue, no relation, in the Fort Greene Historic District. It's a 3-family residential building, which is now being redone into a 1-family. And basically what they want to do is to extend the rear of the building, an extension, which was at 1 story, which will be going into 2 stories. And it'll be the brick, there'll be a lot of brickwork that'll be redone. And there'll also be taking care of 4 Landmark Preservation Commission violations by the work that's being done. All right, so we looked at it and we found basically that the work was decent. It doesn't affect any other buildings next, either next to each other. Decently designed. There'll be no, windows, new windows will be put in as well. And we voted in favor of this 7-1 to 1. And we ask for your approval of this for 253 Carlton Avenue.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the committee's recommendation.
So moved.
Bring a second, Mr. Smith. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Raise your hand or make a statement aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Raise your hand or make a statement. Any abstentions? Please raise your hand or make a statement. Motion carries. Correct, Jessica?
Very correct.
All right, great. Next up,
I'm here. Well, you've been given, I just want to let the executive committee know that our committee voted 9-0 for a support, I guess it'll be a letter of support regarding the abolitionist place or abolitionist park and the concerns over the location of the dog park, especially along the Underground Railroad areas on Duffield Street. So we did vote in favor of having the dog park not be near the location of the areas that are historic along for the Underground Railroad locations.
thanks, Carlton. Item number 6, committees to report. The first item you see is economic development and employment. Neither the co-chair, Bill Flournoy, neither the chair, Bill Flournoy, or co-chair, Denise Peterson, are available this evening. So we'll move on to the next committee, which is Health, Environment, and Social Service. Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My name is Brandon Smith. I'm the Chair of Health, Environment, Social Services. I'm so lucky to have multiple members of my committee here, but briefly, Ms. McKnight is very honored to have as my co-chair, and Ms. Thurston is also secretary of our committee, and honored to have her here as well too. We have amazingly 2 meetings to report on at this session. There was a committee meeting that we held on November the 3rd, where we were delighted to hear from Ms. Tiffany Robin of the Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island area Health Education Center to talk to us about the opioid crisis. We had a committee discussion about this where we talked about how opioids are a leading cause of death from injuries in the United States. Drug poisoning is leading cause of death from injuries in the United States, and 3rd leading cause of premature death in New York City. Close to 1 million people have died of opioid overdose since 1999. And one way to help folks who are struggling with addiction is to work to remove the stigma around addiction. So we had a committee discussion about that with a number of committee members and board members who attended and participated. And we also heard 4 different liquor licenses, which we discussed at the general board meeting. And we had a brief discussion about a committee idea to hold a health fair in the future. And that's an idea that I wouldn't say we fully planned out at the committee yet or thought about, but it's something that we're going to continue talking about in in the future. And that was our November 3rd committee meeting. On Monday, November 9th, we had an informational session on a shelter that is being built at 1 Hoyt Street. Good reminder as community board members, these are not matters that we get to vote upon, but it was a very robust session where we had the deputy superintendent from the Department of Homeless Services, as well as a representative of the provider, the African American Planning Commission, Inc., talk about all of the particulars for this shelter that is going to go in at 1 Hoyt Street. We talked about everything from COVID testing to mental health services to folks concerned about safety to the need to really promote and support the poor individuals who end up having to reside under these shelters, and the challenges that we all face as a community with homelessness. There was a number of public members who are members of the public who came and commented, and we definitely honored as many as we could, and had a long public meeting that I think brought to light a range of different thoughts and experiences in this process. There were several elected officials who attended, and I was very grateful for the support of the board office and everyone from the board who attended that meeting as well too. So that's pretty much the summary of my meetings, and I'll leave the floor back to you, Mr. Chair, unless there's any comments or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next committee to report, Parks and Recreation.
Good evening. I'm Mr. Singletary. I'm Barbara Zoller-Gringer, the chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee. I'm delighted that my co-chair, Andrew Lastawecki, is here. Great photo of him. Last week we met, and you may recall that each of the hi Andrew, that each of the members of our committee is sort of looking at a particular park, generally a playground near them. And we had some updates on that at the towards the end of the season last year. So last week we had people report again. So we were looking at a variety of playgrounds and parks. And what I just wanted to mention is two things sort of stood out from that. One is at almost every place you go, concerns about the turf, that people get home and they have all these little black granule substances, which are probably recycled tires that have been put into this turf in their clothes, and their concerns about health regards about those. And we did have a presentation from the Parks Department on this a while back, but I think it bears repeating and following up on, because it seems to be prevalent throughout. The other thing that came up that I was not aware of, in two instances, people reported of a homeless person living in the park. And that's something, and these were playgrounds really, and concerns about users of a playground not wanting to go to a particular area of the playground because a homeless person was living there. So it's something I think we should bring up with the Parks Department next time we have an opportunity to speak with them. And as I said, it's not something I was aware of, but it is impacting on the use of those parks by other people. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Next committee to report, Transportation and Public Safety.
Good evening, everyone, again. We had a lively meeting, as we sometimes do. We did the public section, comment section at the beginning of the meeting, and John Quint had arranged that we as a countdown clock, so that we had a countdown clock when the members of the public spoke, and it worked fairly well. But as I said, that the public comment section became really the community forum, and And there was an issue raised that we sent back to the board office for them to review. And if it's not resolved, we'll arrange for it to go on the agenda next week so that people have notice of it. We also had a presentation from the Dumbo Ferry Improvements from EDC on the improvements to the Dumbo Ferry. And if you remember last year when they made the changes to how the ferries were going to use the Fulton Ferry area, they did not present it to us until it was a fait accompli. And the Brooklyn Bridge Development Corp sent them to us to get our approval on construction to take place at night instead of going longer. It was to improve the ferry dock and to make it more ADA compliant. And what we did, because we thought that it was appropriate to hear from the community about this first before the committee voted on, we sent EDC to speak with the people at Fulton, the Fulton Ferry Association, the Dumbo Association, and also to speak with the CAC at the Brooklyn Bridge Park, and then report back to us what their response was. So while it was an interesting presentation about what they plan to do and how the construction, there were issues because they want to do nighttime construction, which would speed up the overall presentation of it. We also discussed the J Street busway pilot project that is taking place on J Street. There was a report last week, DOT issued a report on whether it's been successful or not. It has sped up some bus times. There's still a lot of non-compliance. There's still issues of how it interacts with the bikers. There was discussion that we thought that the signage the people thought the signage could be better. And so we asked, again, the board office to raise with a DOT whether or not they are willing to do additional signage and some additional enforcement on the Brooklyn, on the J Street bus pilot. And that's my report.
Thank you, Sid. Next committee, Youth Education and Cultural Affairs.
Hi, good evening. I'm Betty Flybush. My co-chair is Dorothea Thompson Manning. Okay, so we had, at our last meeting, we had the superintendent of District 13 give us an update on how school is going, how they're making up for the virtual year, how they're increasing mental health support, trauma-informed support, and so on. The superintendent mentioned of the two schools that are going to be coming on in our district. The elementary school is slated not for this coming September, but this September after that, and the middle school for the year after that. So that will be a few years, and there will be community discussions and other ways for input into whether these will be zone schools, meaning where people live in a certain address, they go to a certain school, or whether there will be other ways of children enrolling in schools. He also mentioned the International Baccalaureate, which will be starting in some schools, which is a more rigorous program that teachers will be trained in and so on. And they're very excited about that. And we will be continuing discussions with the superintendent in the future. So that was great. Then the next, in terms of community forum, we had Mr. Roel Rothblatt, as I think Carlton mentioned, or one of my colleagues mentioned, about the dog park that's being planned or implemented for the abolitionist plaza. He's very concerned that there was no approval of the dog park and that the tunnels where people came to their freedom, that they had been demolished, but it wouldn't be appropriate to have the dogs over there. So our committee made a motion. They felt very strongly to seek the full board approval and to bring design people from EDC and the other entities that are designing and planning this public place to a discussion and to move the dog run to another place in the plaza. So, I mean, I don't know if we can have that discussion in the full board or not. Apparently he's gone to other committees as well. I didn't know that, but that's what my committee felt. Then we went into executive session to discuss the applications for students who want to join our youth council. So that was in executive session because it's about, specific people, kind of like personnel. So that, in essence, is our report. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. That concludes agenda item number 6. So we'll move on to what should be agenda item number 7 if you're looking at the agenda that was submitted, which is other committee business. Is there any other committee business? Yes, Jessica.
Just a quick question, although I know Mr. Jordan isn't here, so we might not know the answer. Can someone remind me when we anticipate the roles being posted? I just forget where we had landed on that.
The what being posted?
The job openings once they're
Sure.
ready.
So the job descriptions have been successfully drafted for both the district manager and what we're more commonly referring to as the community associate role that was once held by Gustavo. So the Finance and Personnel Committee has successfully drafted those documents, and they have been submitted to Borough Hall for assistance in getting them posted. We did have a question that has since been resolved. So I'm optimistic and hopeful that those postings will go up early in December, if not sooner, in which case that we would begin to interview. I think the way we left it from the committee and was that we would, obviously fill the most appropriate need first, which is that of the district manager. And then once we've got that under control, then we would go to the next position, which is community associate.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other committee business? Okay, let me move forward to the next section, which is community forum. This is where non-committee members, including board members, have the opportunity to ask questions and make comments. And so with that, Betty, you have your question. You have your hand raised.
Yeah, I would like to.
Wait, for community forum or other business?
It's not about business relating to my committee. It's
Okay,
related to
hold
recycling
hold that thought for a minute. I'm gonna start.
Okay.
I'm gonna start with people who have been waiting, who are not members of the committee. I'll come back to you. Let me start with Mr. Du.
Yes. I had a comment about that controller's report. Given that we feel we are satisfying the requirements of public input, specifically for the Transportation and Land Use and Landmarks Committee, can we consider sending a letter to the controller saying that we respect what he sent us, but Community Board 2 actually does this? Because moving the comment period to the very beginning of the meeting doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, given that a lot of the comments are based on issues that are on the agenda at the meeting. So the comment period can't address it because the presentation hasn't been made yet.
Yes, so let me just get a little more context there. We have already made a submission to the controller's office. Any of the items that we felt were misguided from that, perhaps not having the full purview of how we operate, we've submitted supporting information in that context. I think we're also leaving we also went back with the response that allowed for additional dialogue and communication with the controller's office to have them better understand exactly what we do today. I think as with any audit, you take a moment in time and then you make a finding based on that. I think there was far more examples of what we've done successfully that would dispute some of the items that were presented. And so which case we've done so. And I think what we have tonight is not the final response. I think we're, appropriately to your comments, John, we're engaging and we're trying to get a better sense of what we do today. I don't think anyone would expect that audit is meant to totally disrupt what we do today. It's supposed to enhance and improve. And I'm not sure that all the topics as they've been presented or at the level of understanding that exists on both sides would not lead to some level of disruption. And I don't know if we want to do that. So we're still engaging to see how we come to a point that has the controller's office better understanding of what it is we do and the way we conduct engagement with the community.
Thank you for that. My next item is in the Land Use Committee. We had a very extensive presentation, which Mr. Gordon did report on tonight, on what the community board needs to do to better protect adjacent properties that could be damaged by the construction of something that we approve, whether it's landmarks or land use. The adjacent properties need to be protected. And that was an hour and change presentation that this committee isn't aware that happened.
Well, in fairness, I think that'll be captured in the minutes. We haven't seen those minutes yet. So I'm hopeful that the minutes will capture the essence of that dialogue. Generally, it does.
I'm sure it does. However, not everyone reads the minutes who's listening to this telephone call. So what some of the committees that don't have a vote item do is they synopsize what has happened at the committee because they didn't have anything else to talk about. In landmarks and transportation, that often doesn't happen. So something as important as that, and it was an hour and change meeting, should be synopsized for the entire committee, who not everybody reads those minutes, especially if they're long, gets a handle on what its community boards committees are doing. That was a suggestion that I was going to make a while ago, but tonight it seems more appropriate. And my final item, given the time restraints, is that the Transportation Public Safety Committee in the past 2 months did not entertain a motion for issues that were presented in the committee. I have no idea how that is supposed to be addressed subsequent to the committee chair not accepting a motion. That's an issue that we now need to cover because it happened in each of the last months in the Transportation Committee. The last month's motion to have the community board send a letter to DOT and Department of Transportation about the B38 bus at the corner of DeKalb and Flatbush was denied. And then the motion to have the community board send a letter to DOT about DeKalb Avenue, where the 3 large developments have large parking lots, and the conflicts that is created from all those cars that go and enter and leave that parking lot and conflict with the bus lane, with the bikes. And because bike and
John, I need you to wrap it up for me.
And motor traffic is so substantial, it's creating a lot of conflict. And folks exiting the parking lot are concerned about accidents. It needs to be studied, but it wasn't presented tonight. We got to get that under control.
And may I say something about that?
Well, actually, hold on. What I don't want to do is have you say anything said. This is open forum. We can talk about this offline. It's been duly noted. Thank you.
Okay.
So next person to speak is Mr. Rothbard. Now, Mr. Rothbard, well, let me just say good evening. I hope that your information isn't going to be repetitive, but the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. So I want to thank the Cultural Committee for considering my idea, and very glad that they did that. Since then, I have been looking at some of the original, some 2007, 2008 documents, and it's pretty revealing. There was some real commitment to 19th century abolitionism that was in the plan. And I do recommend that people look at these links. Taya graciously shared some of those. So they're actually kind of revealing and kind of surprised me. So I do recommend looking at them. I'm just glad to hear about them. I do want to make sure people know that the construction has been going on at Abolitionist Place, and there's some heavy machinery. I spoke to the construction manager, and he said that they're being careful about not disturbing 227. There was a pretty dramatic collapse at 227 Abolitionist Place. So there had been gaping holes, and now they're like 2-story long holes at the back of the building. So they have a stop work order there, so they seem to be aware of it, but I just hope that, you know, more eyes on this, the better, because I mean, they were pounding away with like big machinery. And I just want to double check, make sure that everything's going clearly. So you all know how to reach me. I'll put my email in case you haven't seen it, but really Taya's done a great job sharing some of the documents I have. So that's it. Thanks for all of your work and consideration. And I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Mr. Waffle, let me just take this minute to say thank you, because you are someone who, when you have an item that is of concern to your community, you bring it, you make sure you take the time to go to every committee, and you make sure that you come with as much facts and information as provided to you, so that doesn't fall short on the committee. And I thank you for your engagement. Everybody doesn't necessarily have the time, or I would dare say the passion to do that. And so you should not be pushed aside. I just wanted to say thank you for doing that. Keep it up.
I appreciate that a lot.
No problem. Any other community members who have comments who've not already speak? Oh, Betty, you had a comment you wanted to mention. I'm sorry.
I did, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to share that December 18th is the day that sanitation in our district will pick up bags of leaves, and we're giving out free bags, you know, those brown paper kind of bags, not the plastic bags. We're having a community event on the corner of Hoyt and Atlantic on December 4th, and people can get all the free bags that they want.
Thank you, Betty.
Yeah.
Any other community items? I don't think that we have any other community members on the call this evening. Okay, so with that, next item I have on my agenda is adjournment. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I think I see a motion from Mr. Gordon. Is there anyone who's willing to second that? Mr. Lastawecki, the second. Any discussion on the topic? Hearing none. Happy Thanksgiving to all who celebrated. Be safe. Try to get some rest. Try not to eat too much, and have a great evening. Get home safe.
You too. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Night,
Good night.
Good night.